Pride and Perspectives, we're joined by the incomparable Dr. Joe Kort, a pioneering therapist, clinical sexologist, and advocate who's been helping people untangle the beautiful, complicated threads of sexuality, identity, and relationships for nearly 4 decades. From out-of-control behaviors to mixed orientation marriages to the real meaning of sex-positive care. Dr. Kort doesn't flinch. Nope, he listens, he guides, he challenges with his heart. So let's all buckle in, fam. This one's going to be tender, it's going to be candid, and it's oh so necessary. Dr. Kort, welcome to Pride and Perspectives.
Thank you. That might be the nicest intro I've ever had.
You deserve it. You are a great resource here in Southeastern Michigan, and we value your time, especially since you gave me a hard stop at 4. Let's start with the basics. Now, in your own words, what do people still get wrong about sexuality and sexual identity here in 2025?
Well, what's really upsetting and sad about what they get wrong, especially the LGBT community, is that what we do in bed is who we are. So my generation and myself worked really hard to recognize that it's not what we do sexually that makes us LGBT, but the younger LGBT community feels that if you're in bed with a man and you're a man, you're not straight. And so they never got the memo that isn't necessarily true.
I didn't get that email either. So talk about what we should be thinking about and what should we be teaching? Because I love to mentor my younger trans sisters. I love to mentor my nieces who are the lesbians, the bis, even the cis. What should I be teaching them then?
So there's a difference between, this is why people don't understand, it's so nuanced, sexual orientation and erotic orientation. Your sexual orientation is to whom you're attracted. Men, women, a blend of both, neither, other genders. And then there's your erotic orientation, the things that turn you on, the things that get you off. And they don't always align with your sexual orientation.
Really? So I have always given this younger generation credit for the granularity. I am a boomer. I think, are you a boomer?
I am.
I'm a boomer. You're a boomer. So I've always given this generation credit for granularity because when we were growing up, in my own case, you were either a crossdresser, you were a transsexual, or you were a pervert or a fetishist. Talk about that little bit of granularity here while we're going on it.
Yes, I agree. And I love the younger generation are bringing this into the forefront. And I tell therapists all the time, if you don't want to talk about sex, you're going to get left behind, because this generation wants to talk loud and clear, and they're educated more than most therapists. But what they still don't get are the nuances. And so they don't even understand the difference between sexual orientation and erotic orientation. So for instance, just because you have a preference or even a fetish for a certain race, for a certain kind of person, for a certain kind of body, they then make up, well, then you're racist, or then you're physicalist. I don't know what that would be when somebody has a body type or whatever. Instead of recognizing it's just a preference and a fetish, and most preferences and fetishes are not politically correct.
That's saying it mildly. You've been doing this work for over 36 years. How has the stories that your clients are telling you changed over time, and what really hasn't changed?
Oh, that's a great question. I think what's changed is people's idea of what a relationship is or should be. We're from a generation that said this is how it works, and this is how mononormativity, right? One person, longevity with always only the one person. I feel like what's changed is people, and the marriage has to look a certain way, and you have to, agree to sleep in the same bedroom and the same bed, and all this stuff. Today, people are like doing what gay people have always done, which is we do what we want. Like Mike and I haven't slept in the same bedroom in probably over, 15 years because I snored, and he's a light sleeper, and it just became too much. That doesn't mean we still don't love each other, that we're still not being sexual with each other. So I feel like what's been coming into my office more are people saying we make our own rules, and then we're comfortable with that.
What led you to create a center specifically rooted in relationship and sexual health? What gap were you seeing in those traditional therapy models?
the idea that relationships had to be a certain way. There's a lot of bias amongst therapists, and a lot of therapists haven't done their own work, and a lot of LGBT therapists haven't done their own homo work, right? I call it homo work. And so then, and also sexuality. I mean, I became more smarter around sexuality. I used to be a sex addiction therapist, for God's sake, for years. And I'm ashamed of that because I believe people can be compulsive, but not addicted. And I just feel like the general public doesn't have good people and good providers to go to that understand the nuances.
You've written a book for clinicians working with LGBTQIA plus clients. What's the most important lesson you hope therapists can learn from your book? And feel free to plug it here.
Yeah, thank you so much. By the way, it's just been translated in Dutch, and it's coming out in June. Yeah, I'm so freaking excited. But yeah, the one thing I want
to visit to go promote the book in the future.
I know. I asked them. No, I said I'd even pay. I would pay just to go and be, but they didn't. It didn't happen. It may. Who knows? But
let's talk about that. The title of the book.
Yeah, the book is LGBTQ Clients in Therapy. And therapists actually, I wasn't going to write it. They were like, every time I would do a talk, we wish there was a book for us. We wish there was a book for us. So then I wrote it, and I wanted them to understand. A lot of therapists think they know everything about LGB, but they only need to learn about T. And I'm all about, no. You need to learn about T, trans, but you don't know what you think you know. Just because you're LGBT friendly doesn't mean you know what you're talking about.
Looking at my own health insurance, this has become the new cottage industry, part of the rainbow capitalism, if you will. It's like anybody who's got their shingle hanging out, well, hey, I'm going to make sure I do this too, because I don't want to. It's tough enough getting clients. I don't want to check somebody at the door.
That's so true. And so what they misunderstand is it's one thing to be LGBT friendly. It's another one to be informed.
One of the things you talk about, or your bio talks about, is gay affirmative therapy. What does that look like in practice beyond, say, rainbow flags and you're valid too? Come on. What does that really look like?
It means that you understand the culture, that you understand. And even I have had to learn over time, right? We're not all one in our culture. Lesbians have their own special, unique features, especially in relationships. Gay men have theirs. People that are bisexual have theirs. The trans community, of course. So the uniqueness and in being informed of how, like, for instance, people would ask me, or would say, can I ask if a trans person comes in my office, what's going on down there? In therapy, it also provides anxiety. I always say, in my book, I talk about this. You can ask, how do they use their body for sex? What parts of their body are comfortable? What parts of their body are uncomfortable? These kind of questions, I feel like are, I don't want to say it's not a simple answer, but they're simple. They're like, but therapists don't have it in their minds. They have to be trained.
You've written about gay men in straight marriages, and we've kind of talked about that already. When somebody walks into your office in that situation, having worked with you, what do you hope they walk out believing about themselves?
That they're okay, that you can stay married. You don't have to leave. A lot of therapists, they bond, they side with the straight spouse and say you should move on and get a straight spouse. They bond and support the gay spouse to get out. And I don't do that. I'm like, if that's what you want, that's great. But I want you to leave with knowing that you may make up some kind of negotiation, how you're going to stay married, that nobody even knows on this planet yet. And that's normal and okay for you.
I know that's kind of how I am with my partner, Mel. I came out to them 2 years before we got married. We were in New York. We had seen the Tigers and Yankees. We were watching the Macy's fireworks over the Hudson. And I figured if nothing else, they couldn't walk away and go
home. Good idea.
Thank you. One of the things I love about you, some therapists put on airs or kind of build that defense. And there's that old stereotype that therapists should never share too much, but you're a public feature. You're a podcaster. Where do you draw the line in your life between Joe the clinician and Joe the human being who's lived life too?
That's a great question. I am much more self-disclosing than most therapists, but like I'll say I'm kinky, but clients don't know what my kink is. I'll talk about my issues that I've had with Mike, but not current any issues. If we have a conflict going on live right now, which is less and less after 32 years, thank God, But if we do, I'm not going to share that in the room. I'm not going to share a current struggle, and I'm not going to share something that a client is going to feel compelled to help me with. But other than that, I'm pretty self-disclosing.
I think so. You know, you've written books, you have your podcast, Smart Sex, Smart Love. In that, one of the topics you constantly touch on is aging and sexuality. What's something you wish every 20-year-old knew about sex here in our 50s and 60s?
I really, really wish that they would be more open to foreplay being the main play. That instead of it being all about intercourse, that outer course is a thing. Because as you age, your body isn't going to always be receptive to wanting to engage in intercourse, and you have to be ready for that. And you're not going to be ready if that's the only way you think sex should look.
For the trans and non-binary folks in our audience, what blind spots do you see in therapeutic spaces, and how can we self-advocate for better care?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know how you could self-advocate any more than people are doing, because I feel like the community's really maybe one thing I think the community could learn to do, and that I do feel strongly about this, that my community knew, was to be friends with your allies and not make them feel less than or attacked or defensive. You want your allies to want to understand, and I was always open to wanting to teach people what gay male life was like. I didn't exhaust me to do that. It actually what's the word, it energized me that somebody would be interested in that. And I feel like the holes are that people don't like, a lot of therapists don't even know the difference between a non-binary and a trans, and they just don't understand the nuances. And I feel like it's helpful for the community, I think, to be willing to teach. Not when you go into therapy. You shouldn't have to go into therapy and teach your therapist what it is to be trans, but to be willing outside of therapy offices to kind of talk about it.
And I think that is very important. We in the trans community have a saying: if you've heard one story, you've heard one.
I
And
love that.
yes, you have to credit me the first 3, 4 times you use it. As my friend Dina says, but then after about 5 or 6, you can own it.
I like it though. I like it.
Thank you. But that's really how it is, in working with people peer to peer, in being a part of it. And you know, obviously, I don't have your skill set, but I've helped a lot of people through their social transitions, which is really, really, you know, that is interesting, watching people kind of their egg break and them go out in public for the first time. It's an incredible experience. For 5 years, I was involved with a group, TG Detroit, where we had a lot of social. We take people to mainstream places. My favorite one was when I was on the board. We would walk into the MGM Grand on a Saturday night, all of us dressed to the nines, and it's like, you know, you could hear necks crack, like chiropractors were going to need to be on standby. And at time, and one of the great things about a mainstream venue like that, to me, is always, you know, our girls love to dance. Our girls, they don't need 3 or 4 drinks. And so a couple would be sitting there, they'd be watching us, and she'd want, oh, let's go dance. Oh, no. You know, so they'd come out and they'd dance with us, and they'd have fun with us. And suddenly we became real people to them. We weren't just, oh, look at them.
Yes.
And the partner would come on, he'd see her having too much fun, and he'd want to be a part of it. And I've always said that one of the most important parts of our community is that we have to be the ambassadors. Like, we're coming from a foreign country. I know I use that analogy because I know we have a flag. So
yep.
That idea of being that goodwill ambassador, because a lot of these people, when the conversation then turns around and somebody's, you know, all bitter, and we're public enemy number one for some reason these days. Yep. When you counsel people as they emerge, regardless of where they are on our spectrum, what do you help them? What do you try to prepare them for? What do you say, hey guys, this is who and what we are?
That's a great question. I mean, it just depends on, you know, which part of the alphabet and what age group they're at. Like I'll tell somebody older, now I'm in that age group I used to tell people, and it's true, that you start to get invisible as a gay guy, and you go into bars and even if you're good looking, I don't think I'm unattractive at all. I think I'm attractive, but for my age. And while there's certain guys that like daddies, or there might be, that if you're coming out and you're in your 60s, it's going to be a different world. It may not be what you think you thought it would be and what it would have been in your 50s and younger. And I just help people understand that you have to learn. It's one thing to come out. It's like when I think of Caitlyn Jenner when she came out. It's a one thing to identify I'm trans, but what kind of trans am I? Where's my community? Where's my sense of belonging? They put her on that bus with those other trans women, and she didn't fit in there. She couldn't even relate to them because that's not the kind of trans person she is. That's what I talk about.
I think one of the things specifically I've learned is you use the bus. I'd like to use that as an analogy and get your thoughts on it. Let's say we're all going to Cedar Point. Trans, bi, questioning, queer, gay, lesbian. We all are traveling in that same direction. But when we get there, some of us go off and we sit in the picnic area and people watch. Other people blast to the coasters because they know the lines are going to be long. Some people sit in the bar and get hammered. Some people try the stuff at the Carney games because we're all going in that same direction. All of our goal is Sandusky, Ohio. But when we get there, we kind of do our own thing.
I love this. It's true. And then we don't let each other do our own thing. That's the thing I don't like about the younger generation is they want to tell each other what to do and how to be. And you can't do that, right? I mean, we were already told that. That's our trauma. In my book, LGBTQ Clients in Therapy, I want therapists to understand that growing up LGBT can be a trauma, being told who you're not, being told to suppress, oppress, repress, who you really are is traumatic. And I feel like the younger generation, and even my generation, has expressed that trauma by doing to each other what was done to us.
One of the things you talked about more in the beginning is the term sex addiction. I know that I was part of a support group. I came out to a minister and they had a sex addiction group. I went there and, it's like, yeah, I understood that there were people who were cruising compulsively or spending money or locking themselves and not having, but I didn't really feel like I was a sex addict. And that term has been so hotly debated, even replaced in some circles with out of control sexual behaviors. So what's your stance? What do you think of the language that gets used?
So the addiction model is, first of all, people that are sex addiction therapists are not trained in sexual health, which is what happened to me. I knew a lot about trauma from the model. I knew a lot about addiction, but I knew nothing about sexual health as they didn't because there was nothing for them to teach. When I went out of the model and went into sex therapy and learned that, I realized, wait a minute, sex can't be an addiction. People can experience loss of control, feel out of control. They can even be compulsive. But calling it an addiction is like using conversion therapy. Because here's what a sex addiction therapist will do. Oh, you were addicted to whatever, going to rest areas or whatever someone's doing. So you can't do that anymore because that was your addiction. So I used to say at the end when I started to get wise and on my way out, I used to say, well, what if someone is heterosexual and they're addicted to missionary sex? Should we say to them, I'm so sorry, but now that you're addicted to that, you can no longer have missionary sex? That would be ridiculous. And they didn't like me saying that, but it is ridiculous. So the idea of sex addiction is not right. The addiction model doesn't work. It's nothing more than conversion therapy for sex.
One of the things I face when I go to LGBT areas and clubs and restaurants is that people will come there with that stereotype in their mind of what I need to be, and that they are looking, I will get flirted with and hit up on. And I've been in the same relationship now. We just hit 34 years.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. How can we change that dynamic? If I'm going somewhere to enjoy an adult beverage or dance, or even just enjoy a great meal, how can we change that dynamic? That's been the hardest lesson to me to learn is suddenly I am sexualized by people I don't know. I mean, that's been a hard thing to work through. And I've watched other people. I've been with other people. How give us some insight.
I don't have a good answer for that. That is one thing I'll say, because I said that earlier, that the younger community would say, well, don't fetishize if you have a preference or you have a maybe somebody finds you sexy, that now you're fetishizing that person. And I feel like, wait a minute, not necessarily, but there is people that go too far and would only see you as a sex object and not a human being who has a partner and a real person. I don't know. I don't have a good answer about how to stop people, but I don't think the answer is getting angry and making it all or nothing, you know?
I find a lot of that trope comes from pornography, that
Mhm.
people, oh my God, you're a she-male.
Yeah.
That's a pornographic term. That is
Yeah.
not a term real people use. There is no good language. It's still evolving for us. You know, it's not like, say, and I'm joking when I say this, it's not like otters and bears.
Right. Right. No, it's not. I know. Because otters and bears are even, that's a sexual term, right? It's
Right.
sexual.
And that's
Yeah.
the point I'm making. One of the things I'm enjoying about our conversation is you speak very directly and without judgment. Is this a superpower you learned, or did it come from somewhere personal?
That's a great question. I've always been this way. My friends, even my husband would say to me over the years, you need a little bit more of a filter. You need to be people don't understand. You can't just come out and ask somebody whatever you and I'm like, yes, I can. And I don't need to be a filter. If somebody doesn't like it or doesn't want to answer me, they'll just say, hey, I don't like that. Don't ask me, and I'll stop. But I've just always been inquisitive and curious, and how you see me now is how you would see me in the therapy room, how I do a presentation. I don't change myself very much. I don't want to.
There are certain types of therapy canons you see, EMDR. How do you say that?
Imago relationship therapy.
Imago
Yes.
relationship theories. What's the other one? DBT. Uh,
Yes.
a lot of these new therapies are coming out. Where do you see the place in your practice or for our community to do these things? I know somebody who really had some great healing on DBT, but you know, help us to kind of sift through some of those letters, some of this jargon. I mean, it's almost worse than banking.
You know what it is? It's because social media has people overuse it on social media. And so because DBT is scientifically sound, it has lots of evidence-based, EMDR, same. So imago relationship therapy, these are deep, really important ways of intervening with mental health issues that people come in and relationship issues. But the problem isn't the models, it's how they're being talked about outside of the therapy world.
Do people come in like, oh, I've been seeing these ads for Wegovy and Ozempic, so they go to their PCP and say, I need to try this. Do people, because of that same sort of stuff, come in to your practice and your team and say, oh, I need to do it this way?
Yes. Yeah, and we accept that because if that's our specialty, which there are people here that do certain one, these things, yeah, then that's going to work for them because they've already bought into it and they already believe it. And really, sometimes I think that's really what therapy is. It's not so much our interventions that we're using, it's that you buy into how you're going to get helped, and then you trust the therapist and our relationship, and all the rest is it falls in.
Mixed orientation messages is something that you talk about as part of your practice, and there's something that are still confusing. Take a moment here. What are some myths you'd like to clear up?
About mixed orientation marriages,
Please.
that they don't last. They do, they can, that they aren't monogamous. Many are not, many are. And that it does not come from somebody purposely. There are people that do this, of course, but not, I have, in my practice, I've now, this month is 40 years. I have never met somebody who purposely married a woman as a beard just to, they really didn't know. The myth is that, oh, you knew. They knew they were attracted to men. I'm talking about gay men,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't know they were gay because we don't teach children to be anything other than heterosexual and cisgender. And so you don't know who you are. You might know you have an attraction. So you might think it's a fetish. It's my part of my erotic orientation, not my sexual orientation. So until later in life. I think the kids these days are going to know because they're already talking and have permission to experiment and be with each other and know their orientation before adulthood.
I think that that's important, and it's hard. We're still learning as people what is appropriate to share at what points. And obviously, 10 years ago, we were kind of there, but now we're such mainstream. I love when people come to me with questions. Somebody looked at me once and said, "Are you a man?" I said, "I'm a human."
Mm-hmm.
And that was really kind of backed them down because I don't think they expected that kind of a response on it.
I have to say something. It's very hard and weird for me to watch what's happening to trans people because it's what used to happen to me, right?
Mhm.
If you came onto a guy and he wasn't gay and you didn't know, and he was straight, or you did know and you still wanted to flirt with him, you could be beaten up, and then he would get off legally by the gay panic, and people calling us mentally ill, and people in the DSM. It wasn't until I forget the year now. What it was 1986 or something when they removed it from DSM. And now I'm watching it happen to your community from the outside. And it's like, I just can't believe it. It's unbelievable to me. And I always wondered when it was happening to me at the lesbian and gay population, I always wondered what it was like for straight people who were our allies to watch it. And now I know because I am an ally and I'm watching. It happened to you. It's awful.
I agree. I mean, you sit there, you look at this micro percentage. It's a micro percentage of trans women in sports, and yet it becomes the talking point for politicians. There's not even good clinical evidence of what this process does,
Right. Right.
And I really think that that's one of the things that we need to see a few shekels put in to quantitative research. I do want to ask you one final question. Your work just centers on joy as much as it does on healing. What's one story, and anonymous, of course, that stays with you as a reminder of how and why you do this?
Oh my God, that is such a great question. The most recent work I do with are straight men who have sex with men who are not gay and not bi. I guess to me, that's a really important thing because it's so against culture, LGBT culture, straight culture. And for them to recognize that, oh, I'm acting out with men because I have sexual trauma from childhood. I like anal sex and my wife won't do it. Or whatever the myriad of reasons that straight men do this with other men. When I watch them get it, and then I watch their wives get it, and they can have what we call in sex therapy erotic empathy for themselves and for each other. That brings me the most joy. Actually, let me just tell you one client I had. His wife didn't like his fantasies, and I wrote about him in one of my books. He let me do this. He had fantasies of his wife being fucked by a bunch of guys. Can I talk like that on here? She didn't like it, right? And he wanted to talk about it while they were having sex, and she didn't like it. She didn't want to. She felt like you weren't having sex with me, you're having sex with your fantasy and using me, and that wasn't the case. And so she had to understand why he had this fantasy. It came from his childhood. Not everything does, but this one did, and she had developed erotic empathy with him. So then finally she was willing and able to go with this and talk it through and not do it. She didn't want to do it, but he said, "You don't have to do it. I just want to talk about it." He had such an orgasm, he's told me in my office, that his stomach was in pain from in the pleasure of the orgasm that he had. And he started crying, and I almost did too.
Breakthrough work. And I think we need to talk explicitly. We need to be able to say things and relate to each other, that tribal wisdom. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. My little niche of the world, we rely a lot on tribal wisdom. The bigger alphabet soup here, we rely a lot on tribal wisdoms. And I think that's important to have professionals like yourself kind of get rid of the stereotypes, the bias, and the bullshit.
Yes.
Can I say that on my podcast? This has been a tremendous half hour. I appreciate your time so much. And I promise we will get together and do this again.
Yeah, I'll have you on my podcast in the next season for sure.
Oh, I'd love that. Well, folks, I want to thank Dr. Joe for joining us today. I'm Dina Walters, and that's my perspective.